You've had a lot of nice moments in your career as a coach. What was it like telling Sean Manor that he was going to debut tomorrow night?
Yeah, they're one of the most enjoyable conversations you have as a coach, and they're all a little bit different, and it's really exciting when a first-year player comes in and plays his first game. But arguably, it's even better when you get to speak to a 26-year-old who's really done his time and probably thought his dream of playing AFL footy was over long ago, and he's fought his way back to this point. And we brought him in thinking that he was a strong chance to play AFL footy straight away, but he still needed to prove himself in our system through the pre-season, and we've got pretty good availability. So that I think it's different, say, to this time last year in some respects, in that to force your way into our team at the moment with really only a couple of injuries is a quality effort. And again, we were specific around the role that we thought he could play for our team, but we still think we've got some pretty good players, and it's hard to force your way into our 23. So that's really exciting for Sean. But I think the same goes for Jai Clark, who's really only played about 20 minutes for us. He's had a cracking pre-season, and we're glad to get him in. And Ollie Dempsey as well, forcing his way into our best team, is really a tribute to the pre-season they've had. And as I said, we'd like to think that we've opened up those opportunities for those guys, but it wasn't a free pass. They needed to prove that they could do it. We're certainly not at the stage where we're saying we're just going to play young guys for the sake of it. We're picking the best team we can, and it's a credit to those three in particular.
Did you watch much of Sean last year, and were you involved in the drafting process?
Only to the extent that I am normally, which isn't a whole lot, to be honest. I don't get brought in until relatively late in the piece, unless there's someone specific that we were targeting. And Sean was one that I was encouraged to have a look at well before the season finished. And he kicked 6 in a VFL grand final. It sort of wanted him to get dragged at half time the way he was going, but all's well that ends well. So look, it was really, I was a very small part in that. Our recruiting team had identified him quite early in the piece, and I guess it does fit within our kind of overall philosophy that we're not ageist. And in some ways, you could make an argument that a 26-year-old is better prepared to come in and have an impact than an 18-year-old, and there's still plenty of time for him to have a sort of 6 to 8 year AFL career.
So 28-6 for Werribee and a losing grand final. Could Cats fans expect fireworks from Sean Manor given the chance at this level?
No, I think what they should expect, especially the hardened Cat supporters that have watched what can be difficult spectacles in the practice games, and they should expect what they saw from him in those games. And he had an impact for us, and that's what we think he can do. So the expectation's not off the charts, but to a man in our team, I don't think we've got any guys that should be going out thinking that they can't be really influential players on the game. Sean, it's his first game, but he can come and impact straight away.
You mentioned the start last year, probably this time last year, talking about maybe testing the depth and a few guys that run available, whereas it seems like it's, apart from obviously Cam, unfortunately, and a few others, it's been pretty much a faultless pre-season injury-wise. Do you feel like you're in a better place compared to heading into this time 12 months ago?
I mean, we are, but it doesn't guarantee anything, unfortunately. And it's difficult to assess, even internally, exactly where you're at. Every club has their own metrics to gauge fitness and preparation physically, and they're going well, but we don't contend that we're any better than any other team. We just assume that everyone's had a good pre-season in that respect. That's the professional environment these days. But the other metric that's really clear is availability, and we struggled a bit last year, especially in some really concentrated parts of the ground, because there's injuries, and there's a whole lot of injuries in one area, and clearly the ladder hurts you a lot more. So yeah, look, we think we're in pretty good shape, but under no illusions that the hard part's yet to come.
Chris, you've got so much out of your Warrior veterans, Paddy and Tom Hawkins, Zach Tui, Mitch Duncan, like they've, and the rest. They've done so much for you over the years. Do you feel like they've still got, that A-grade quality left that can help push you back up to where you want to be?
Besides their age, which I think is a pretty flimsy and kind of casual assessment, I don't see any reason why those guys can't play at their best. I mean, Tom Hawkins, I'll use as an example. I just watch him train session after session. He just doesn't miss. He does what we ask of him. Now, we're conscious of not, really pushing him to his absolute limit, and we'll manage him through the season. But unless people are seeing something that I'm not, he just looks like his normal self to me. And we are conscious of that, and we're not saying we're right necessarily. It's just the way we do things. Sometimes you look at a 29-year-old and you think he's not the player he used to be. And I'm looking at a 35-year-old thinking he just looks like his normal self. So I think I get where you're coming from. You can kind of look at some of those guys and think, well, you have to slow down at some point, but we just haven't seen those signs yet.
Just on Sean, you came on later in those 2 practice games. Will he be used as the sub on Saturday in his debut?
No, maybe, but we're like Ross and Corey Enright and those guys are too good for us to give them any more than we need to. So we'll try to make a habit of not announcing that before we have to.
Just on the flip side of what Drew was saying, you mentioned Jai Clark before. I know it won't be the way to start, but look at the midfield on the list. It's Bruin and Clark in the middle. And talking to Tanner last week, there's a real eagerness to say, we want to help out the midfield. We want to own it and own the pressure or the expectation that comes with it. So how much do you, whilst rewarding the talent of your older guys, start to throw the keys to the younger guys more?
Well, hopefully it's not as binary as it's either up to the young guys to step up or it's up to our old guys to maintain their level. Hopefully it's a bit harder to work out, because the contribution between those cohorts kind of ebbs and flows. But along those lines, the way I've been thinking about it a bit is we went into the 22 season thinking Max Holmes could be a pretty good player for us, and Tyson Stengel's a chance. We brought him in to play a specific role, and Sam De Koning, it's hard for young key position players to come in and have an impact, but he's earned his chance and we'll see how it goes. Now that those guys are 2 years on, Bruin, Bose, who unfortunately is not available this week, but Bose, Bruin, Clark, Ollie Henry have had a full year in our system. When you put all those guys together, and there are a few others as well, it's kind of like, well, it's, no one likes the term rebuild, but it's kind of part of a rebuild. But and none of those guys, as I said, and include Sean Manor in that, are players that we think we're just going to have to be really patient with them, and they're going to have to, find their way at the level. They're ready to play at the level now. But to compete against virtually any team in the comp, that's what you need. There aren't many teams, probably only a handful, that are genuinely rebuilding, and you might have to be patient with. Everyone else, to me, seems ready to go. So we can be as positive and optimistic around how we've tried to regenerate our list, but the competition's just so hard that might get you to the starting line, and then we'll see how we go from there.
Did you like what you saw from Max off half back, or does he come back into the midfield?
He'll do a bit of everything. I think he's. We think he's a player who's ready to go. He complements some of the adjustments that we tried to make over the pre-season, but at least from mine, and everyone in our coaching staff might have a slightly different view. But the bottom line is it's difficult to forecast where he's going to end up. But we certainly think that he's going to play a lot as an inside mid as his career develops.
Shannon Neal named the emergency after a pretty strong pre-season. How close was he to getting a run against the Saints?
Yeah, completely line ball, to the point where he may still play. It's just that was a tough call, and we're determined to get him into the team. But as I said before, not at the expense of players having to earn it and play well. And he has had a good pre-season and he has played well enough to justify a spot in the team. It just came down to, you know, a line ball call, more on structure than him individually. But no, I think I'm very confident that he'll play well enough to just demand his spot in the team.
You touched on Alec Dempsey there before. How impressed have you been with his preparation after a strong VFL season last year?
Yeah, well, it's been, I mean, if he can continue, if he were a stock, you'd be buying him. Like his rate of growth has been significant from playing old carries in the Ammos. So yeah, if he continues that improvement, and it hasn't slowed down in the last 12 months, by the way, or the last 6 months. As I said, he's forced his way into our team based on his training form and a couple of pre-season games. You know, again, in our forward half, we're missing Gary Rowan, but that's it. So that's a good effort. It's not like 3 spots opened up, so he's the next best candidate. He just is the best in his role right at the moment. So there's no reason for us to think that his rate of improvement's going to slow down. But if that happens, he's going to be a pretty special player.
There was a report linking Geelong to Clayton Oliver during the week. Chris, is there any truth to that story?
I'll ask our list management guys. They keep me out of the loop with this stuff, but so what I know publicly, I don't even know for sure, but he's contracted for 5 or 6 years. 7, yeah. They tend to be pretty hard to get, those guys. But yeah, they're pretty easy stories to write, those speculative ones, I imagine.
I think Kilda have shown a real intent to keep adding speed to their ball movement off half-back. What do you make of them? What are the dangers from them?
Well, at the very least, it's consistent. The way they're trying to play, the way they've drafted, you know, I mean, almost all their players, even through the draft, and you know, we're talking young players. It's consistent with an approach that suggests they want to play with speed and back that outside run, and got some quality ball users in. And you can see that Henry's come in and had an impact in pre-season games for whatever they're worth. But you know, it does speak to what they're aiming to do, and I think they did that with success across the 2 pre-season games. Yeah, it'd be much more comforting if you looked at them and thought what they're doing makes no sense. But unfortunately, it makes perfect sense. It's pretty clear what they're going for, and they're clearly pretty good at it already. So that's a challenge.
And your excitement just for the night itself. I mean, it's always been a fortress down here. It's going to feel even more so like one with the new stand and some extra bodies in it. It'll be massive.
Yeah. Well, it's felt like it's a long time coming. There was a hope that the stand would be finished a year ago, give or take. And so we've had pretty cool crowds with 20,000 in here. So to double it and get 40. My understanding is that Cat supporters can still get to the game, but there aren't that many tickets left, and clearly we should be aiming to sell it out and have the place pumping. It's a historic moment, and the Geelong people that you talk to, I mean, I remember playing here. Like it is unrecognisable, this place, compared to what it was, you know, only kind of 10 or 15 years ago. And I know people on the outside might kind of roll their eyes a little bit, but Geelong people should be proud of this place. You know, it's been a long, hard road. You know, even go back to, you know, Frank Costa and people that aren't with us here anymore. You know, hopefully, you know, Frank's family and others just should be so proud. You know, even Brian Cook, like he's kicking back on an extended holiday now after they've already played 2 games. But you know, I'm sure he'll be sort of watching the game tomorrow night. You know, proud of, you know, what's been achieved here.
You made some comments about opening rounds earlier in the week. Would you like to see every team have 2 buys in the AFL season from next year?
Probably, but in all honesty, it's not something that dominates my thinking. In fact, I applaud the AFL for experimenting with things, and I think on a lot of metrics, the opening round thing has worked, but it's just completely illogical to say that it's perfect. Right? But we do run a competition that is very difficult to be perfect. You'd never start a comp from scratch with 23 rounds and 18 teams and 10 in Victoria, and like it's by definition there needs to be compromises in the way you put it together. And I think when you compromise for something, it's because you think that outcome is better than what you're giving up. But it's a mistake to say you're giving up nothing. It has been a little bit awkward, I think, in Victoria, but last night was a good game, and we'll get into the season and I'll try to give you some other controversies to use.
Jack Bowes, Chris, have you got a sight on the length of time that you might be without him?
Yeah, he'll play next week. Yeah, so it's just he had a little it was a significant cork, and then came back and trained okay, and then just had a little bit of a kind of relapse there that made them, medical staff that is, think that it's better just to be a bit slower in his return. But he would have been touch and go to play this week, so the feedback is he'll definitely be right next week.
Can I ask where Jet Hughes is at with his footy?
I think that's right. Sorry, I should. I'm second guessing myself now to say he's definitely right, but it's minor.
Jet Hughes just finds himself outside the 26 this week. Will he have to run around in the VFL tomorrow afternoon?
Yeah, he'll play in the VFL, but it's probably not right to say he's out of the 26. I mean, technically he is, but you know, we pick a 23, and then the emergencies tend to be for a whole range of different priorities other than, you know, it's the next in and the next in and the next in, if you follow. So, yeah, it's difficult for Busey. Look, in my view, when he's at his best, he's in our best team, and that will happen throughout the year, no doubt. Just hasn't worked out for him this week, but yeah, he'll be in our team pretty soon. And as you know, I don't even need to forecast it. We're not going to play the same 23 every week.